It is the change in season here in the Northeast, and I am down in my cozy office trying to stay cozy. And I wanted to come in today and talk about this idea of leadership. I've taught, coached, and led on leadership for many, many years now. And it's one of those words that we all make different meaning of, and we all have a different relationship to, right? Sometimes people think of leadership and they think of the leader itself. Sometimes that people think of like a hierarchical leadership structure where you're over everyone. Sometimes people think about leaders that they've had in the past. Sometimes people don't even identify with the word leader or leadership. But one thing that I've noticed is more often than not, people forget, even though we think about leaders, right? We think about famous leaders. When we think about leadership in the context of our own worlds, leading in our businesses, leading in our organizations, leading in our families, leading in our communities, a lot of the times we go to the external, right? Who am I leading? Who is my team? What are they struggling with? What are they doing well? How can I get them to be working more effectively? Why aren't they doing what I want them to do? And we start to distort leadership with management. And the interesting part about leadership is it's actually a social construct, and leadership is made up of three main parts: the leader, self, the people you are leading, maybe your team, and the social context of the situation. And as any of those ebb and flow, the construct of leadership shifts. And where I find more often than not, I do most of my work with my clients is around coming back to self. Because so many times, because I work with high achievers, ambitious go-getters, we are so locked in on the external factors of what is going to get us where we want to go. How are we going to solve the problem? Why isn't this working? What's in the way? What's the fix? What's the solution? And we need all of that. And we can't forget about that other very essential part of the puzzle. I won't say it's the most important part because I just described that construct to you and it relies on all three pieces. But I will say it becomes the most important part because it's the most overlooked part. Because it is the part that everyone skips over in order to achieve, to get to the goals, to check a box, when it's often the part that can hold us back the most. And that's really hard to admit, because who wants to admit that they're at fault in a situation or that they are a part of the problem? Especially not when you have this added internal and external pressure of being the leader in a given situation. You're the CEO, maybe people are relying on you for paychecks, your family's relying on you to put food on the table, pay the bills. Times are tough. That's a lot of pressure. And over again, I see people come to me, brilliant people in their missions, in their industries, in their leadership, just brilliant, who are so stuck and identify a problem. Maybe it's a team member not up to par, not doing what they want. We'll use that example because it's come up a couple times recently in the last few months with clients. And they get so zeroed in and so myopic on they're not the right fit, or they're unprofessional, they're lazy, whatever the conversation is. And what we pause and have to do and step back is, are they not the right fit? Or are your hands as the leader still too locked in and tied in on what they're trying to do? Are you micromanaging them? Or are you allowing them to step up into their own version of leadership, into their own power of their genius? And so that's a great example of what I see happen a lot of times is really brilliant people wanting to get everyone to the common goal, but not always allowing the other people in the situation, whether that be a team member or maybe a spouse or partner, operate and do things in their way. And so we have to step back as the leaders and realize that maybe it's actually our own stuff, our own patterns, our own fears, right? In that situation, when we unpack it together, what we usually find under the surface is a lot of pressure, a lot of fear that they won't succeed, a lot of people-pleasing patterns that show up in interesting ways, and how a lot of this all shows up to protect is in control. If I control the entire narrative, I won't let people down, will succeed. I've always got it done myself, so now I need everyone to do it my way because I know that works, instead of being open and recognizing that there may be other ways to operate and do it. And so the work that I do with so many effective, successful leaders is helping them come back to themselves. Because leadership starts with yourself. Being able to lead yourself, being able to understand your patterns that you've brought from past life experiences that maybe served you historically to protect you, to help you get where you wanted to go, but maybe they don't actually serve you anymore. Maybe we don't need them and we can release them, right? Identifying where that is, identifying where you're not getting the chance to be in your zone of genius because you've had to always do everything yourself. And now as your business is evolving, as the organization you're running is evolving, as your family is evolving, your role gets to shift, but it can only shift if you are able to come back to yourself, support yourself, understand yourself truly, and then make changes based on that. Because when a leader does that, when a leader is willing to pause, even though it's scary, and take a step back and reassess and reevaluate, and then start to make shifts from that, when they are able to actually slow down, learn to prioritize their actual needs first, not at the expense of the business or organization, what happens is we create a stronger foundation. We create a stronger infrastructure. We now have a leader that has the capacity that is expanded to hold space better for these difficult conversations, to have the capacity to creatively think about growth and scaling instead of survival mode and control, right? We have a mission that has a strong foundation with the leader that is rooted and grounded so that it continue to grow. And then that leader's role can shift and step out, right? So leadership is such a funny topic because there's so much there, but I just wanted to zero in on that one area that when we allow ourselves as the leaders to pause and assess who we are, how we're operating, where our stuff is getting in the way, where we're not actually allowing ourselves to really shine, that ripple out into your business, your community, your family. Everyone benefits from that. And I know it's scary. I know it's hard to tell an ambitious, high achiever go-getter to, hey, like it's time to pause and slow down a little and regroup here and reevaluate. Believe me, I get a lot of the looks, and there's also a part of you that's really craving that. And so here's your permission slip and evidence that this is actually the way so that you can actually achieve your goals and not do it in a way that is going to just constantly be self-sacrificing you, constantly have you resentful of your business, constantly have you frustrated with the people around you, but instead full of peace and contentment and excitement for your passion again. That's what leadership is.